You are also working with refugees, you're working with immigrants,
Asylum
seekers and all that. What kind of issues women asylum seekers face in Britain today?
Most of the asylum seekers whom the centre works with, it's Women Against Rape and Legal Action for Women and Black Women's Rape Action Project that does the majority of work with asylum seekers, women who come to the centre for help. And what they are telling us, what they are all telling us, is that it becomes harder and harder, whether the women have experienced, rape or torture, other torture, or whatever they have experienced, seeing their children killed in front of them, who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. For example, some of the women have had to leave their children behind, and they're not treated as mothers when they come to the UK. They say, but I'm worried about my children and I don't know where they are, and I want to be able to find them and to be able to help them, and that. All of those struggles the women are involved with, and we do all that we can to be supportive and work with them and give them the rights. But those are constantly being cut away, and legal aid is being mercilessly cut, so that we can only get some lawyers who are ready to work pro bono without pay, in order for them even to have the legal rights that the government allows them. Those of us who come from countries of the South who have experienced the terrors of war, are irrelevant to the government, and they want to get rid of us.
How is the working situation for many migrant women?
If you go to the UK and you go to a hospital, you will see that much, if not most of the staff are people who've come from other countries, and they are doing the work not only of nurses, but of assistants and of cleaners and of porters and all the other work that hospitals require. And then you hear the next day on the radio that they are, that they're coming to this country to live off the UK. They are contributing enormously. Their wages are quite low, lower than everybody else's. And that is what is happening in all kinds of other service industries. So, by the way, when we say we want a living wage for carers, it is really an anti-racist slogan, because many of the carers are immigrant people who the only work for whom is caring. And then, of course, there are the under-the-table immigrants, because if you are there and you cannot get status, you cannot go back, you don't even have the fare to go back. So you take jobs that are off the cards. You can always be rounded up. You live in that kind of fear, and also the employers naturally take advantage of you. And the conditions of the work also, there's something now called 0 hours. I don't know if you have it in Norway, but it means that if you're a carer and you come to see me, and you take 15 minutes with me, then you take 20 minutes to go to see another person. The 20 minutes traveling is not paid for. You're only paid for the 15 minutes that you spend with me and the 15 minutes that you spend with him. And so you've worked for almost an hour, but you get 30 minutes pay. And that's the situation that many, many immigrant people face in all kinds of areas.
Women care workers who are coming from Asia, from Africa, and working in Europe in these days. What do you think about that development?
All care workers suffer from the fact that all women are expected to be care workers for free. that as long as mother's work and family carers' work is demeaned and dismissed and ignored, in fact, that's as long as care workers of strangers will also suffer from grave exploitation.
Yeah, because
all that caring work is valuable,
right,
all of it.
Right, because what is happening now is because care work is not paid and not valued here in Europe. The women who are mostly women who are coming from Asian countries, they are not paid well, and many of them
No.
are also victim of sexual exploitation and trafficking. And
Well, I think there's much less trafficking than the government would like to believe. And the problem is, if we are trafficked, if we report it, they deport us. What advantage is there to going to the government, to going to law enforcement in order to get some justice from that point of view? That the way that immigrants are treated generally and the way carers are treated generally really comes together in the care worker, and the lack of respect and backing, that the person deserves. I think a lot of women, have to supplement their income. And women have always supplemented their income in a number of ways, one of which is sex work. And that, and then they come and raid you, and you often don't have the backing of the women's movement, of the feminists, and you are up against the wall. You're up against the wall because you're an immigrant, you're not white, you're doing a job that is demeaned, and in addition, you're trying to supplement your income with what is technically legal, but in fact, what the government would like to persecute or prosecute. So you're in a lot of trouble. And I feel that the women's movement, as we know it now, I don't mean the grassroots women's movement, which is always struggling, but the women's movement that is constituted and calls itself that, has not been supportive of the struggles of those of us who are down here. And that begins, I think, with asylum seekers and immigrants and women of color.
There have been issues of lots of cuts in welfare benefits. How is the situation in England?
We hear in England that capitalism is in crisis. But capitalism is not in crisis. We are in crisis because of capitalism. That's very different. Their wages, their profits are going up. But the cuts that have come down against women in particular have been horrendous. First of all, we lost our jobs in the public sector. Everybody's noted that mostly it's women who have lost their jobs, and there aren't other jobs that they can get, you see. It seems to me, because you've been asking me about wages for housework, if we don't get some money, we are going to be in real starvation straits. And how, you can have a kind of discussion on wages for housework in the abstract, but when women are missing meals to feed their children, and you say this woman has a right to money in order to feed her children and have a life for herself when there aren't even any jobs out there for her, you cannot oppose that, it seems to me. I don't know why women who call themselves feminists can possibly oppose this now. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're about all to speak up in favor, but I hope they will do that soon because it's absolutely vital.